We are 6 days until the midterm elections, and one thing that definitely will be different on Tuesday, voters can choose among a record-breaking number of women running for Congress. Actually, it's almost double the number from the last midterms, and many are celebrating that as progress.
The revolution starts here.
Let this weight not drag you down, but help to get your heels stuck in.
Look at this crop of Democratic candidates running for Congress. We need more women in charge.
The original year of the woman was 1992. This wave looks even larger. In fact, for decades, the majority of nominees from both parties were white men, a gender trend that was bipartisan. Now the share of white men among Democratic House nominees has dropped below a majority to 42%. The rest of the field is comprised of women and women of color and men of color, which makes this the first year that 58% of the Democratic field reflect those other groups. Republicans adding women as well, but the percent of female Republican House candidates for Congress this year is still a relatively low 13%. Now, voters have more choices on the field, but experts know that doesn't mean the field is equal yet. Take this fact. Even in this new year of the woman, Democratic donors are pouring an average of $185,000 more to male candidates than women this year. That can reflect how more men have incumbency and track records that give access to money and donor networks. Now, many women candidates say they are inspired to run precisely because of adversity and gender discrimination in the Trump era.
My parents came to America with nothing. That's why I'm running for Congress.
We honor our promises to our veterans and their families.
In Congress, I'll fight to protect opportunities, like access to affordable education, job training, and quality health care.
To find the solutions for our future, we have to understand our past.
Our towns and homes are flooded with toxic sludge because Congress neglected infrastructure and basic safety precautions.
We will never take corporate PAC money. We rely on you.
I know the system does not reflect us, but I believe that all of us have power. All of us belong.
I'm Jeff Holland, and I approve this message.
Politicos and news junkies talk a lot about these House races and some of these candidates, but we don't always hear a lot from them. And tonight, we're going to do that and try something we've never done before on this show, literally. That's when we're back in 30 seconds.
You're watching MSNBC International.
We will not be quiet.
This guy's behavior doesn't make any sense.
We will not back down.
This doesn't look good, General.
We will remain resolute.
There is something new and big that has just arisen.
Asking what others aren't asking.
Why would the president want Congress to investigate for information he already has?
And wake up ready to do it again.
The Rachel Maddow Show, only on MSNBC.
Back to our exclusive special on the record-breaking number of women running for office this year, 237 women running. The first thing we want to do is talk to 8 different women who are on the ballot this Tuesday from both parties, who are all first-time congressional candidates. So let me welcome them for something a little different. Democratic Jahana Haynes, a teacher running for Congress in Connecticut. Dr. Kylie Horton, a Democrat running for Congress in North Carolina. Democrat Mariah Phillips, a teacher running for Congress in Tennessee. Republican Pearl Kim, a former prosecutor running for Congress in Pennsylvania. Democrat Gina Ortiz Jones, an Iraq veteran running for Congress in Texas. Susan Hutchison, a former Republican Party chair running in Washington against Senator Maria Cantwell, who I should mention I once worked for. Democrat Deb Haaland, former Democratic Party chair running for Congress in New Mexico. And Democrat Katie Porter, a law professor running for Congress in California. There are a lot of you. That's sort of the point. Thanks, everyone, for being part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. I heard at least 4 thank yous.
Thank you.
We want to go around the horn and do this because this does look like something really different in terms of what voters can choose from on Tuesday. Jahana, let me start with you in the upper left. Why are you running this year? Maybe in a couple sentences, and we'll go around the horn.
Because I'm tired of waiting for other people to do what I'd like to see government do, to have my issues and my voice reflected. So why not me? I need to speak up for people like me, people, my students, their families, my community.
Kyle?
I'm running to be a fighter for our families. For far too long, career politicians like my opponent have been putting the wants of Washington elites and big money special interests and their lobbyists over the needs of everyday North Carolinians. I'm running to put our families first for a change.
Mariah?
The divisiveness of the 2016 election impacted my classroom and our greater community. Family members were unfriending each other on Facebook. We've got to be better than this. As a U.S. government teacher, I know that government works best when we have people in office who are focused on finding solutions and solving problems. And that's what we need more of in Washington.
Pearl?
I was frustrated with Washington, the inaction of Congress and politicians that could not work across the aisle for the common good. And I was also inspired by my own personal journey, the Me Too movement, and being a sexual assault survivor that went on to become a special victims prosecutor. I wanted to effectuate greater change.
And I'm going to keep moving around, but since you mentioned that, do you feel that that gender gap has basically been a problem, that men in Congress don't always understand those issues you just mentioned? To Pearl?
Well, I don't think it's specific to gender per se, because I think with my background, it's relatively unique. I was a former special victims prosecutor for nearly a decade.
Right, so you have that track record professionally as well. Gina?
Sure. Yes.
Hi, I'm running to protect the opportunities that allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, and serve our country, something everybody in this country should be able to do. And as somebody that worked in national security for 14 years, first as an intelligence officer in the Air Force and then as a civil servant working on economic and national security issues in the executive office of the president, and that entire time I never asked anybody what party they were with. It just didn't matter. So I look forward to bringing a public servant's mindset back to Congress and making sure we do things like protect health care. Unlike, again, my opponent who's voted 8 times to take away health care protections for people that have a pre-existing condition.
You say you didn't ask people what party they're in. We're in the news, so we do. Susan is a Republican, first-time female congressional candidate. How do you see gender with a president who, of course, is in the middle of these debates?
Well, I've been an advocate for women all my adult life. In fact, in my early days in my career, we went on strike and I walked a picket line for 2 months to fight for fair pay for women. And so as I bring unique characteristics and experience to my Senate race, I want you to know that I'm running, not because I'm a woman, but I'm the most equipped person to fight for the people of Washington State.
Deb?
Thank you. Congress has never heard a voice like mine because there's never been a Native American woman in Congress, and representation matters. I'm a single mom. I know what it's like to struggle, and I feel that I can be a voice for the people of New Mexico who have struggled.
Deb, you say that, and that's something that people might hear and really have to sit on for a second. When we talk about representation, we talk about fear and identity politics, culture wars. You're saying there's never been a Native American woman in the Congress when we're on land that was Native American people's land. I mean, how do you convey that as an important thing along with representing everyone that you would if you won?
Of course. Well, I've been on the ground here in New Mexico for close to the past 20 years. So there's no question that I fight for every single New Mexican, and the people in my district know that. It's interesting when folks, talk about identity politics. If you've always been represented in this country, in government, any level of government, you don't know what it's like to not ever see yourself in any body of government. So I feel that it's time to have a Native woman in Congress, and that's one of the reasons I'm running.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking to something, Katie, you get your opening hello, and also maybe you want to speak to what Deb has raised, which is when people talk about this, and it's come up so much in the Trump era, there's this feeling about people saying, well, some people say they feel their culture is being encroached upon, but that often comes from a place of assuming that being in the culture that has power or being a man in a Congress that's overwhelmingly run by men is the default. Why should that be the default? Plus, Katie, you get your opening.
Thank you so much. I too am a single mom. I'm a working single mom of 3 young children, and it's very much part of who I am. I understand what it's like to juggle childcare, try to save for college, and so I very much want people to vote for me because I am a woman. It's part of who I am. It's part of my identity, and my race is unusual. I'm running against an incumbent Republican woman who's shown time and time again that she votes against the things that are important to mothers, that are important to parents, and that are really making this country great. So I feel like my background as a woman is an important part of my story, and I'm going to talk about it on the campaign trail. And both men and women across Orange County are really responding to it.
And Katie, you're saying you think your opponent as a member of the Republican Party is what, a blank check for Trump?
She's absolutely a blank check for Trump. She's voted with him 99% of the time. Even when it's hurt Orange County families, she voted for a tax plan that's going to cause Orange County families to pay more. It's a financial shock we can't afford in this area come tax time. And she's voted to take away health care. She's voted multiple times to defund Planned Parenthood, take away a woman's right to choose. She's not governing for the people of the 45th Congressional District here in California. She's not governing correctly for men or women. She's refused to meet with people, and she's afraid to have the tough conversations that we should expect our government leaders to have.
Fascinating, because you're talking there about something that a lot of people think is progress, which is a race where gender, and to some degree, might be canceled out a little bit if both candidates are women. Usually in so many of these races, and we were looking at this preparing the segment, both candidates, the default is men. Pearl, I want to read something to you on the Republican side. Megan Malloy is the co-founder of Republican Women for Progress. Progress is a word people can debate. But she made some waves by saying, quote, "We've told a lot of women, don't run this year. You're a great candidate. If it were any other year, you would win." As a Republican yourself running, I wonder your response to that and to young women watching.
Well, I mean, I think what's unique with Pennsylvania in particular is that there has never been a woman of color elected into Congress in Pennsylvania. And in addition to that, there's actually never been a Korean American female elected into Congress in the history of the United States of America. I think it's important that all perspectives and different perspectives be represented at the table so that we can properly govern our communities.
Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I would, Ari. This is Johanna. When you asked Deb the same question, I mean, we've always been represented sometimes very effectively by people who were not similarly situated. But, I mean, we make up parts of our community. Connecticut as well has never sent an African-American woman to Congress. But in order for us to accurately represent the people in our communities, we should have the voices of all of those people. You know, diversity of experience, background, race, ethnicity, people from all different walks of life. That's the only way we can really have real conversations about the issues that impact our communities.
Yeah, and this is Gina. I look forward to being the first out member of Congress from Texas. It's more important I'm not the last, and it's most important, as we've all talked about, that our communities are well represented. It's not lost on me, though, that I'm running against somebody who does not support the Equality Act. So he thinks it's okay for again, I'm an Iraq War veteran, for me to be discriminated against in housing, in education, in employment, only because I'm a member of the LGBT community. And also when we think about the importance of, of life experiences, I know exactly what it's like when your health insurance plan is, I hope you don't get sick, because I was raised by a single mother. So you're never going to have to ask somebody like me, where I am on protecting or increasing funding for the Children's Health Insurance Program, for example. I think we invest in young people, protect the most vulnerable. Unfortunately, Will Hurd sees that differently.
Anyone else?
Ari, think about this. Imagine if the Senate Judiciary Committee would have been all women, how different the Kavanaugh hearings would have been.
And
Yeah.
Ari, there are...
Going to Johanna first, and then I think Kyle.
Oh, that wasn't me, but I agree. I think that, that our priorities are reflected by who's at the table.
Mariah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, as a teacher running for Congress, I think that there's a unique perspective that I can offer, and I know Johanna as well, that, I see what our families face every day. The diversity of my student population impacts my decisions. I can see the impact of health care or lack of health care for my struggling families, mental health, when families are struggling economically, and when the way that our budgets impact education and how that has a roll-up effect on our economies and our community.
Kyle?
Yep.
And Ari, there are no women doctors currently in Congress, and there's actually never been a Democratic woman doctor who was a full voting member in the House of Representatives. So we're running to bring a voice to the table of expertise in healthcare, because as there are sometimes 16 men behind closed doors on the Senate side making decisions about women's health, I think Congress needs a doctor in the House who's fought to defend our veterans and save our health care.
Right. The old saying, is there a doctor in the House? The answer here, if it was a woman doctor, you're saying would be no. And so I've been using first names because we have so many titles here. But Kyle, Dr. Horton, speak to how that works when you look at just the rank ignorance that many men have about the female side of healthcare and what that means with everything from preventive medicine to contraception to pregnancy, because that has been a big issue, I got to say, for men in Congress.
It really has been, and it's staggering, the lack of knowledge and awareness. And it's even affected, I have been a VA doctor, and it's even worse for women veterans trying to get contraceptives and a gender-specific care within the VA healthcare system. And so I really am hoping to be a voice of competence who understands science and facts and wants to bring my knowledge and expertise to the table for a change.
This is Gina. I'd like to say just one more piece on that. You know, I think maybe at times it's that the men don't have the background in it, but it's not just exclusive to men. I think what is clearly lacking, though, is some people that are knowledgeable about it, but just don't have the moral courage to stand up for communities that need to be heard. I mean, for example, a woman having a baby in Texas is 5 times more likely to die during that process than if she had that baby in California. I think that is directly related to what we're talking about here, representation. There are 36 people honored to represent Texas and Washington, and only 3 of them are women. And our representation in the state houses is not any better. So representation matters, and it continues to affect the health and the livelihood of women in Texas.
Let's go to Susan on that, on a perspective as a Republican, and you're running in a state that went against Trump last time. How do you speak to these issues?
Well, we're not a deep blue state, as a lot of people think. We're actually a purple state. Our legislature is split right down the middle. And so we believe that our race is about incumbency, and 18 years of Maria Cantwell is long enough. People say wherever I go around the state, she's never here. What has she done for us? And her office is not receptive to our phone calls or our letters. And so she doesn't work for us. And so I'm here because I believe that the people of Washington state need better leadership and better representation in the halls of power. And my opponent is all about being a D.C. insider and kowtowing and being beholden to the special interests and the lobbyists.
I want to also talk about money. We've talked a lot about issues and some of the idea of breaking through and changing Congress. We mentioned in the setup to this that it's really fascinating, and many people say troubling, that donors on the Democratic side, many of whom see themselves as, I think, supportive of the races many of you are running, still are in aggregate, and they may not even realize it, but they're giving more money to the male candidates and the women candidates. Do any of you think that's a problem because people are being sexist, or it's a problem because they just don't realize that? Who wants to speak to that?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that a little bit. I mean, I think one of the things that we have to fight for if we want to have a representative Congress is meaningful campaign finance reform. I think campaign finance reform is a women's issue. I think it's an issue about representation. We know there's an earnings gap out there. We know that women have less wealth, less historical wealth. They often don't control the family pocketbook for discretionary expenditures like campaign donations. So meaningful campaign finance reform is not only going to get dark money, special interest money, and foreign money out of our politics, it's also going to make sure that women and men can participate equally in the political process as donors as well as voters.
Let me go to Mariah. I'm going to profile you, as a teacher. I'm going to take a wild guess using my reporter skills that you're not constantly hanging out with Wall Street bankers. No. So how does this fit in? Is that a kind of, and a lot of discrimination can be somewhat unseen or even accidental, but is that a kind of systemic thing where there may be male candidates who have networks that aren't available to you? How has that affected your race? How do you fix it?
I think that definitely is true, and I have to say that I am proud to say that I've actually outraised my male incumbent this cycle, and raised $500,000, which as a public school teacher is 15 years of salary. So I'll just say I'm very proud. Way more than that, actually. I'm proud of the fact that we've had a lot of people within our district really make an investment in our campaign. But I think for women, it's just hard to make that ask. And I think that men traditionally have had more experience, more confidence with going in and asking for money. That's not an easy thing to do. And so women have to really train themselves and be prepared for making the ask and getting the no. And so the consistency that goes on with that, I definitely think that there is some discrimination in that, I'm sure, with some people. But for me, it was just getting over my own insecurity about asking for money, which is a hard thing for a lot of women to do.
And the way you put it, the way it feels at first, because you're doing something new and getting into it, I want to use that as a final question to all of you in a word or a sentence, starting with Johanna up in the corner. I mean, what have you learned this year? What do you want people watching, and particularly young people who might run for office, to know about how it was to decide you should run part of our government? You do deserve to be on that ballot. You should ask people for money. All the things Mariah was just talking about, starting with Johanna.
Well, I think money was a big issue for me. I mean, I did not have the endorsement. I did not have a network. And I was told you'll never be seen as viable because you can't raise the money that it takes. So I think that system, by design or default, eliminates so many people who would be truly effective leaders. You know, I'm proud to say that in both the primary and the general, I've raised more than any of the candidates on either side because I just believed that I could. But there are so many people who are even more effective, more skillful than me, who count themselves out because they can't check all those boxes. And I just think that we have to begin to imagine this differently.
Kyle,
and that's what I did.
A final thought.
Just stepped in and imagined it differently.
Yeah, if I were going to give a diagnosis to Washington, it'd be in critical condition. So I think what I want people to take away is that we need change agents. We can't just have career politicians who stay in office forever. If you're thinking about running, step up. You can do it. We need a change.
Mariah?
Yep.
No, I absolutely agree. If I would have considered how much money it was going to take to do this at the beginning, it would have given me a second pause. But in order to change the way it works, we've got to change the kind of people we put in Washington, and we've got to put people in Washington that want to make that change.
Pearl?
I was an agent of change in Pennsylvania. I secured the first human trafficking conviction in the state. I worked with legislators, both Republicans and Democrats, to expand protections, and then secured the first human trafficking conviction under the new legislation. I think it's time to have a perspective like myself in Washington to effectuate change.
Gina?
Sure. Look, our country is stronger, and when our representatives are actually representative of the people that are being represented. So, look, your country needs you. Step up. You can imagine there were some folks at the start of this process that did not think a gay vet could do that well running in Texas. But look, you know the issues. You show the voters that you've got the moral courage to fight for them, and that'll carry the day.
Susan?
Well, I live in a state that's so diverse. We've got the far left in downtown Seattle, and we've got the conservatives in the agricultural areas of the state. And I just want to represent all of them and be the voice, especially for the people who haven't had a voice for such a long time in our state.
Deb?
Thank you, Ari. I made a decision early on to not take any money that would compromise my values. And with respect to folks jumping in, as an organizer, and I've been one here in New Mexico for close to 20 years, I want folks to get involved now so they can build that network, so they can, when they're ready to run, they have everything in place. I was outspent in my primary 3-1, and we won on the doors. So start knocking, start walking.
Katie?
Yeah, I think our democracy is only as rich and as vibrant as the voices that we hear in it. I think everybody should consider how they can contribute, and whether that's knocking doors or running for office. Our democracy, like I said, it's as rich and as talented as those who step up to participate in it. I've just been thrilled that so many people have gotten involved, gone to our website, katieporter.com, and gotten involved. So I just encourage everybody to remember that their vote is their voice.
Katie was the one who got the URL in. in, you guys. That's that's crucial for the part of the money we were talking about.
I waited patiently, Ari, to get that in.
I know why candidates do that. You're good at what you do. All of you are first-time candidates. People watching at home are looking and listening to first-time candidates here addressing some of these big issues as people think about their vote and what it means next week. I want to thank each of you for making time and coordinating the schedule so we could do this on the beat tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ari.
Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.